You are now listening to the Select Gaming Podcast.
This is our first podcast of the year. Wanted to start with a little bit of good news. I feel like we need some good news nowadays.
That's right.
So we recently were very, very lucky enough to, achieve the milestone of the YouTube world of 1,000 subscribers. And I guess it's been interesting because we started this channel probably how many years ago? 3 years ago?
It would have been 2021. Yeah, very very slow burn.
Very slow burn. I remember just like yesterday when I think the first upload was a Parappa the Rapper remastered long play that just sat there on like 10 views for
That's right.
a month or something. But yeah, that was something recently that that happened, and it was quite a nice thing to see. After 3 years of doing what we've been doing. I guess most people don't really know too much about us or who we are and whatnot, and we're gonna keep it that way. However, I think something just getting to or why we started the channel is something maybe that we should share with people, like how the idea came about, what we're all about, the games that we love, and sort of why we're doing this essentially.
I mean, we've known each other for time immemorial, basically. But the YouTube thing specifically came about, I would say, mostly out of a recognition that, well, we're playing these games anyway. We're going back to our sort of formative gaming years and playing a lot of these titles anyway. I had just picked up a Raspberry Pi at the very start of the pandemic, and I said, "Well, it's Dusty. You need to pick one of these up too."
Yeah.
And just going through that rabbit hole of playing a lot of the older games, Chocobo Racing and the Terminator for the Sega CD and the Tick, that really got us on the roll, and just getting a AverMedia cheapo capture card was really all the incentive all the startup it took, with the idea that, well, we're playing these games anyway, we may as well record them and throw them up online, given that there's a lot of videos of some of the games that we play. I mean, most of the game long plays that we have, we're not, they're not breaking news, but a lot of the capture that's on there is old captures. They're not exactly the highest quality, and we figured that that someone could have a nice 1080p quality version of the Terminator Sega CD or Tobal number 1 for PS1, that would be a service to other people. And then we slowly started saying, well, what if we did some reviews, and sort of it's snowballed from there. Snowballed very slowly from there, but nevertheless it snowballed from there.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of, I guess, the sort of vibe of this channel in particular was just, and sort of still is in a lot of ways, is out of frustration that certain things just don't exist. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
Like I do searches on videos sometimes for certain games, and I'm shocked that they either the full game doesn't exist, or it's too low quality, or it just doesn't exist at all. I think we sort of have, as people who consume content nowadays, we kind of have this expectation that stuff is always going to be up on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Like in the last little while being like 10 plus years, like usually it's on YouTube. I'll find a scene of a film, I'll find a song or whatever. I'm very shocked, if I don't find what I'm looking for on YouTube. And I think the thing is, though, as well, people forget that a lot of the content on YouTube is user generated. Like someone had to record that and put that on there. And I think, one of the things that we do on the channel is of course, out of love, but out of frustration that it's something that we feel hasn't properly been documented up to this point. And it's like, and there's many, many individuals who do fabulous jobs, like better than us, who do like a 4K capture of, like, I don't even know, like what, like a Felix the Cat game for the NES. Like it's a wonderful Brave New World in that regard. But for us, it's kind of like a lot of the games that we do play, we have personal connections to them. It's either we've always wanted to play them, or we played them in the past, and now that we can kind of document it, we put it up because it's sort of for us. Because I do go back to watch the long plays that we do as like little memories of like what was going on at the time in our lives. So yeah, a lot of it, a lot of this channel exists because it's out of just the whole thing of course, having a love for this medium and being able to document it because, video game preservation already, it doesn't have the greatest reputation. And I really do feel a lot of the things that exist are because of gamers who love games up to this point.
Yeah, and to add to that, it's also part of the other frustration that I think you and I both talked about quite early when we started the channel is that number one, we weren't going to do this necessarily just to sort of chase after clicks or like so the fact that it took us 3 years to get monetized is really not at all surprising, because we weren't releasing, if we only released content on we talked about DK Oldies and Intellivision Amico, but we only talked about that because we're interested in DK Oldies, as we're interested in retro game collecting, and you've been quite open and honest about it. It's like you wanted Intellivision Amico to be a success. You pre-ordered the console, right? We don't get involved in these things to dunk on them. And that's also partly, I think, why I really think that the goal for this channel was to fill that gap that we both saw. Let's not beat around the bush. Like the retro gaming YouTube sphere is cramped packed with tons and tons of creators who, as you say, have much bigger budgets to produce much greater things. But at the same time, it's often a place where it's like you review a game only to talk about how bad it is. And so eventually, when we came to starting to write reviews, we started to champion not necessarily games that were bad as such, but to talk about games in a way that that we understood the contexts, or we tried to put them in a context in which they could be appreciated. Our first review was Chocobo Racing. I don't think that's a particularly amazing review now, but that review was written specifically with the intention of like highlighting the fact that it's an interesting piece in Squaresoft's history, and it's an interesting game that children will enjoy. It's not a perfect one, but like maybe we should celebrate the sort of games in the middle tier. And I think our channel does that pretty well. And even when we played hockey games, we weren't dumping into the sort of Hat-Tricks was a series about playing just whatever hockey game we found. Because, it would have been easy to sort of just do nothing but stream, the latest Pokemon game that got released or the latest Animal Crossing. But who's going to stream pro hockey for the Intellivision? Who will stand up for that champion?
But in a weird way, the whole thing with emulation really kind of, in my mind, for me anyways, it just kind of solidified that I'm like, this is my era of games. Like the SNES and the PlayStation, that was the happiest I ever was in gaming. And it's like I'm still going down that rabbit hole of games. Nowadays, I know the cool thing to do is to play the more recent thing or to be the next sort of IGN, but it's, in all honesty, I get more excited about finding a ROM hack of Thrill Kill and playing that for the first time. That, to me, it's almost like that era never ended because I get to do this now, and I'm kind of more excited about that. I rarely get excited about new games. I mean, I still of course love current gaming and whatnot, but I don't know, there's something special about that when you have a personal connection to whatever it is. Like it could be cooking, it could be watching movies, it could be reading books, whatever. I think the personal connections that we have with these games is that we actually play them. We put them up, not the most perfect long plays. There's a ton of mistakes that I did in like a Jersey Devil game, but it's there. And then if we were intrigued enough to talk about it, well, then we talk about it. And I think that's sort of the goal in anything. Like you have to really feel a connection to the things that you're talking about if you want other people to just kind of listen.
And it's an underrated aspect of sort of game preservation, is not just the preservation of sort of the files themselves or the cartridges or the promotional material and the paper and all that, but also like, that run that you did of Snoopy's Grand Adventure or Dr. Slump. In some ways they're unremarkable, but in other ways they're a moment in time, right? And it captures that for better or for worse.
Well, the Snoopy one's interesting because I'll give you I'll give you an example why, and it's because a lot of people are watching that one. They're watching the long play for Snoopy's Grand Adventure because the ones that already exist that have 100K views, because those channels are monetized, they muted those copyrighted music tracks. So now everyone's coming over and they're like, oh man, finally a video that doesn't have the music muted. However, now that we're monetized and I see the views that we're getting, the evil side of me is like, should I just mute this and like maybe we make like $10 off of it? But I'm like, no,
It's not
Dusty,
worth it.
that's not why we made it. We didn't make it for that. We made it because it should exist in the way that either you remember playing it or you should see it if you haven't played it, or not going to have the chance to play it, you get to see it. That's what it's there for.
Dusty, any personal goals for the channel? I mean, I know we sort of do things as we come, and that's really our style. But any sort of things that you're looking forward to doing in the next year or so?
I mean, I think for us, it's like the wonderful thing would be is if we could do this more often, which right now is not really the case, and hopefully that changes in the future. But just to, of course, do more reviews, do more long plays, but specifically for things that we've talked about, doing some more product reviews of things that we actually buy, that we actually invested in and want to talk about, show those things. So probably want to do more of that. Of course, keep up with our motto of talking about games that are lesser known titles that people don't know about or they can't even get a hold of because it never made it to like a North American market.
Or in the case of a game that that I want to review very soon, costs about $1 bazillion because of how late it was released in a certain console's life cycle.
I mean, I think the other thing too is specifically for this podcast, of course, it'd be great to grow it and continue to talk about more current things. But most importantly, it would be great to just it'd be great to get some guests on, just people in the gaming industry, people that we admire. I have my little list of folks that I would love to just come on and talk about life, talk about games, talk about their experience making games or whatever role they've had in something that we appreciate. That would be a goal as well, just to kind of get some more insight on the things that people have worked on that we admire, because I feel like having a podcast, especially nowadays, out of everything that we do, I feel like this is the most easiest. I mean, nothing's easy, but it's the easiest in a way where it's like, hey, let's hop on and let's talk about something that's at least current that people can kind of get behind or relate to.
Yeah, it would be great to use the platform as little and growing as it is to just highlight, some, like, not just the games, but also, yeah, as you say, the creators and just people in the industry in general. I would love to see if there's a possibility of having, people who own retro game stores on here as well, and just talk about the industry and sort of our particular area or other particular areas. Because one of the things that you learn, especially when you see game collecting and retro game collecting, especially on YouTube, is that it's not everything is created equal, and in different parts of the United States and Canada and the rest of the world, going game hunting in one place and going game hunting in another is completely different. So it'd be great to sort of showcase some of those differences and how different retailers sort of approach that with the community in terms of like the products they make available and how they make them and how they acquire their stock too. That would be interesting to sort of see how games get into the hands of people where we live.
Yeah, there's a lot we can do, but I think most importantly, it's when I was seeing the numbers rise up and it was getting closer to the 1,000 mark, I didn't get too excited yet because I was like, maybe like people are all gonna just jump ship. But then like we waited and it was like around 170, 180. And yeah, I think as a personal thing, as a personal achievement for us and starting this as a nice sort of healthy way to just kind of document our friendship and our gaming careers or whatever you want to call it. We did it for us, first and foremost. We did it with no expectations. And I think that's the sort of moral with this is that, you keep up with it and do it because you want to. Do not look for the return on investment because that's the last thing to happen. Do it because you enjoy it and you enjoy the idea of seeing something that you've created done. And that goes with anything. It could be with anything in life. You stick with it and stay the course and good things will happen.
It's interesting because when we started the podcast, the channel, part of me felt that 1,000 subscribers seemed an absolute impossible number to reach, and 3 years might just be impossible. But I just wonder now that we're here at having reached 1,000, and 100,000 seems damn near impossible. I wonder if it's gonna. I wonder if that'll happen. And obviously we're not going to create content just to get to that stage. But boy, it's going to be funny to look back on this conversation if we ever do reach that milestone.
The hope is that it will continue to go up and that more people will connect with what, the stuff that we're making. It is sort of like a diary through video games.
Totally.
Which is nice. So yeah, I don't know who you are out there, but thank you for subscribing and watching our stuff and being with us, and stick with us. We're going to continue to do what we do and hopefully do more of it and do better things in the future.
Thank you for tuning into the Select Gaming Podcast. Like, share, and subscribe. We create videos for the Select Gaming that are guided by our personal interests, and your support makes that possible.